This is the Entrepreneur Unleashed Show, episode 27 with AJ Jacobs.
The Entrepreneur Unleashed. The Entrepreneur Unleashed. The Entrepreneurs Unleashed. The podcast where purpose and passion become revenue streams. Be real. Take a stand. Change lives. Here's your host, Patty Keating.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Unleashed Show. I'm your host, Patty Keating. Entrepreneurs everywhere are creating a new breed of business success. They're making their own rules, taking a stand for their purpose, leading through integrity, and making money by changing lives. Join me each week for compelling messages that will inspire and empower you to unleash your true purpose. Would you like to turn your message into a signature system and monetize it with a program or product online? Join me for the Online Biz webinar, where we'll take you through the steps required to monetize your message. Head on over to the onlinebizwebinar.com and reserve your spot today. I am thrilled to bring you today AJ Jacobs. AJ is the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers about radical self-improvement, and he's also an editor-at-large at Esquire magazine, a commentator on NPR, and a columnist for Mental Floss magazine. AJ has appeared on Oprah, The Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN, The Dr. Oz Show, Conan, and The Colbert Report. His next project is to unite the world in one big family tree and then hold the biggest family reunion in history. Hi, AJ.
Hello, cousin Patty. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself a little bit and let the listeners know who you are and what you've been up to and what's happening in your life.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I take on these big, radical self-improvement projects because I need a lot of improving. And I've done ones where I tried to be the healthiest person alive. So I tried every exercise regimen and every diet known to humankind. I did one where I tried to learn about religion because I grew up with no religion at all. As I say in my book, I'm Jewish, but I'm Jewish in the same way the Olive Garden is Italian. So not very. But I wanted to learn about it, so I decided one way would be to live by the rules of the Bible. So I dove in and followed everything from the 10 Commandments to growing a beard. You're not allowed to shave the corners of your beard. I didn't know where it was, so I just had this huge topiary on my chin, and I looked like ZZ Top or you name it. And then another one I tried to learn. I felt that I needed to know more, so I took the radical step. I went in my father's footsteps. When I was a kid, he started to read the Encyclopedia Britannica, but he only made it up to the middle of the letter B before he decided he had better things to do. So I took on that challenge and finished what he began. So I take on these projects and see how they change my life, take the best lessons from them, and give those to the reader so they don't have to do the whole thing themselves.
That's amazing. I had the opportunity to meet you at a conference here in Portland and hear your story, and I was so inspired by it. I'm curious, what inspired you to start these projects?
Well, as I say, I need a lot of improvement, and I think the best way to learn about something is to dive in. I mean, if you want to learn about France, you can read about articles about it, or you can look at the census report. But if you really want to know, then you should go there and eat some croissants and hang out at a cafe. So that's sort of that's my belief, and I just love it because I get to try new things all the time, and I encourage people. You don't have to do this for a living, but I encourage people to be as experimental in their own lives as they possibly can be, because it keeps things interesting, it keeps the brain working, and you're constantly learning. So even if it's small things like trying a new toothpaste every week or going a different way to work every day for a week, that's what I'm all about.
So whenever we take on a new project, there is a lot of learning involved, as you mentioned. What major obstacles showed up for you on your path when you've taken on one of these projects?
Well, it's hard to choose. There's so many obstacles. That's all there are. I mean, one big one is just the idea of uh, being okay with failure and being okay with embarrassment and moving past that, and just having chutzpah, as the Jewish people say. So, like for instance, I was writing this book about health, and it was such a big topic: food, exercise, sleep, stress, sex. There's everything in there, and would wake up every morning and be sort of in despair that it was such a big topic, and I'd never be able to uh, wrap my mind around it all. I'd never finish the book. So one secret I learned to overcoming this obstacle was to pretend. And I really believe that's a very important part of my life. I pretended to be confident. I pretended to myself, well, you know what, I'm going to do it. This is going to be a big seller. And I acted as if I were confident, even though I wasn't. So I would call up doctors and tell them about my book and make uh, appointments for interviews. I'd call my publisher and say, we should have this big party when the book comes out and only serve healthy drinks like kale martini. And after a couple of hours of pretending I was confident, my mind would catch up with my actions, and I would become more confident. And that I still use all the time. I mean, there's a great quote from the guy who founded Habitat for Humanity that I always think of. He said, "It's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than it is to think your way into a new way of acting."
Yeah, we got to get that in the show notes. That's a great one.
I love it because I didn't make it up, but I live by it. It's all about how much the outer affects the inner. And psychologists talk about this all the time. If you force your face into the shape of a smile, you actually become a little bit happier, which is a little creepy, but it works. And the faster way of saying it is fake it till you make it. Or as Amy Cuddy said in her TED Talk, fake it till you become it. It's just an incredibly powerful tool.
So what lesson have you learned as a result of taking on these projects, really faking it till you make it, as she says? What have you learned about yourself and life?
Oh, well, so much. I mean, one is just that, even if you're not confident or compassionate, then act as if you are, and you'll become a little bit better. One of the big lessons from the Bible project was the idea of gratitude, because the Bible says that you should be thankful all the time. So I was trying to take this literally, along with the beard and all the others. So I would say little thanks for everything that happened in my day. And I would press the elevator button, and I'd be thankful the elevator came. And I'd get in the elevator, and I'd be thankful that it didn't plummet to the basement and break my collarbone, and on and on. And it was a weird way to live, but it was also wonderful, because I started to realize there are hundreds of things that go right every day that I totally take for granted. And I focus on the 3 or 4 that go wrong. So that's been a radical shift in my mentality, focusing on, when I write a book, I might get 90 nice emails saying they like the book, and then one saying, I'm a horrible person. So what do I my mind automatically focuses on that one. So it's a conscious effort not to do that, to really take advantage every time you get something nice happens, something good happens that you would barely notice normally, but consciously making a note of that.
That's a way to transform the world right there.
I can't take credit for transforming the world, but it definitely helped my life.
No, we all have to do it independently, but that's a powerful way to be in the world.
I find it's helped me tremendously. Even in everyday life, like when you go to the airport, and I'm always annoyed because my gate is always the farthest one from security. So I'm always walking, 15 minutes. But it's not. if I paid attention, which I've started to, that's not true. I just remember the ones where I have to walk 15 minutes because they're annoying. But a lot of the times, it's the gate is right there. So you've got to change your way of perceiving, overcome the confirmation bias, it's called.
Yes, absolutely. So, AJ, what are you passionate about right now?
Well, I am very passionate about one thing, and you mentioned it in your intro. It's this new project I'm doing where, as you said, I am putting together the biggest family tree in history with thousands of other collaborators. We're making a family tree of the entire world. And so you're it, because the idea is everyone is connected. And right now, this family tree has 78 million people on it. And
Whoa.
if you go on, it's not too hard to join. You can go on these websites like Genie or Wikitree or my website, which is globalfamilyreunion.com, and you put in your tree, and then it figures out the overlap and how you connect to the big tree. And it's just amazing because that old saying that we're all one big family, now it finally can be proven true. And I love this. And my idea is, it's a little idealistic, I know, but if once we realize how closely we all are related, then we'll treat each other a little more kindly. And it's so fun because you go and you see how you're related to friends from camp or high school or celebrities. I am just a mere 17 steps away from Gwyneth Paltrow. And she has no idea who I am, but she is my cousin officially. And Barack Obama, he is my aunt's fifth grade aunt's husband's brother's wife's seventh grade nephew. So we're practically brothers right there. But it's so fun seeing how we all connect, either by blood or by marriage. And then, as you mentioned, I thought, what can I do with all these millions of new cousins? I'm not going to ask them for money. I'm not going to ask them for a blender. But I thought, wouldn't it be fun to put on the biggest family reunion ever? So that's what I'm doing. And it's in June 6, 2015. It's a fundraiser for Alzheimer's, so any proceeds will go there. But it'll be like a family reunion meets a TED conference, meets a music festival. There are going to be great speakers. I've already lined up some fabulous ones. And Sister Sledge will play the biggest rendition of We Are Family
That's
ever.
awesome.
So I'm super excited. And yeah, I just am encouraging. And the response has been great because you know why? Even especially for entrepreneurs, this is the ultimate social network. It's very funny because if you want to reach someone, then it's a pretty compelling intro to say, listen, I don't want to freak you out, but I am your cousin. We are we are 15 steps away.
That's
Can
awesome.
I take a meeting with you? So it does have that advantage as well.
So, where can people find out about this?
That is on my website, globalfamilyreunion.com,
Awesome.
or they can email me directly at aj@ajjacobs.com. And basically all we need is the names of your grandparents and great-grandparents if you have those, but grandparents is enough, and then their birth dates and any famous, semi-famous ancestor you might have. That's not necessary, but if you do have it, it makes it easier. But yeah, the names of your grandparents, and then I've got these teams of enthusiastic researchers who are figuring out how we're all related. And I just find it to be wonderful. And it's a great teaching tool for your kids. I'm 16 steps away from Albert Einstein, so my kids love that. And I mean, it's not all good. I'm also like 14 steps away from Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer.
Oh, no.
So that is through my wife's side, though. I just want to make that
Just
clear.
a little note right there.
Yeah. So anyway, I find it to be a wonder, and I think it's going to be just an amazing event where you've got all these thousands of people there, and you can figure out they're going to be interesting people, and they're like a TED conference, but they're all related. And I will add that all 7 billion members of the human family are invited. those who have found a link get a bracelet and are part of the biggest family photo. But everyone can come. It's going to be a documentary by Morgan Spurlock, who did Super Size Me. So, yes, I am. And I'll tell you, this is the most entrepreneurial thing I've ever done.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm terrified. I am terrified because it's an enormous undertaking.
That means that you're right on point.
I know, listening to you and your podcasts, I've learned that that's okay.
That's part of the deal.
Right.
So what's your vision for the next 5 years?
Well, this is going to take me at least another 2 years because it's an enormous one. And then I don't know. I mean, writing is fascinating right now because it's very scary and going through all these changes, and it's becoming more entrepreneurial than ever. To be a writer now is basically to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You have to find new ways of making money because the traditional ways are falling apart. Yes. So whether that's speaking or putting on events, this event I'm not making money on. In fact, I'm probably going to lose money, but hopefully not too much. But maybe it'll teach me some skills and I can put on different events in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be able to create something out of everything you learn from this amazing project.
Right. I'm very excited about that.
All right. So let's talk about your own growth. What's the best advice that you ever received?
I was thinking about this earlier. One piece of advice, I don't know if it's the best, but it's certainly, I liked it, was I work at Esquire, as you mentioned, and one of the guys I interviewed was George Clooney, and he was very great, very charming. The idea of the interview was that I would show him all of the stuff on the internet about him because he never goes on the internet, and he would comment on it. And he was very lighthearted about, there are some horrible, it is just hot. Even George Clooney, there's no one who escapes the internet's wrath. So there was, one website, there was some dumb homophobic website that said George Clooney is gay, gay, gay. And he said, that's not true. I am gay, gay, but that third gay is pushing it. Which I thought that's a good response. But anyway, I asked him how did he achieve what he had achieved, and he gave me this advice. He said ever since he's been in high school, he has the same attitude. When he got up to bat, as when he was playing baseball, he would think to himself, didn't think, am I going to hit a home run? He would think, where is my home run going to go? Am I going to hit it to left field or to right field? And there's something about that delusional optimism that really helped him. And it is delusional because a lot of times he would strike out, as we all do. But without that optimism, you just are going to curl up into a fetal position and not accomplish anything. So I love the idea of delusional optimism to a point. It can be dangerous if you lose complete touch with reality, and your organization needs a mix. You need the real number cruncher, people who are very realistic and can see all the negatives. But to succeed, you also need the George Clooneys who say, this is going to be a home run no matter what. And that will increase your chances of actually doing it.
And that's what you were mentioning earlier with the, really seeing yourself pretending and seeing yourself in the future already being successful.
Totally. Exactly.
So, AJ, what personal growth have you experienced as a result of your journey?
Well, I've still got a lot of growing to do. I am far from done growing, I hope. But one thing I think that has helped me is trying to, in everything you do, not just think of it for yourself, but how does it help others? And weirdly, that sometimes has a positive benefit on you when you look at the world that way, and makes you happier. So even something like health, it can be seen as a very vain undertaking. You work out, so you have better abs. But for me, the real motivator to doing exercise and eating right is that I want to be around to see my kids grow up. I want to be at their weddings. So trying to see the world that way as not just a series of rights, but as a series of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about like day to day. What kind of resources and tools do you use, gadgets that make your life easier?
Aside from your podcast, of course, I would say, well, one of the big things for me uh, is that I don't believe we have a lot of willpower, and you have to plan around that. So I'm sure you've heard of the Ulysses strategy or the Odysseus strategy, which refers to when Odysseus in the Odyssey was on the boat and they were approaching the singing sirens. And these sirens were so alluring that sailors would jump into the sea and drown. So Odysseus, before he got there, he told his sailors to tie him to the mast and fill his ears with beeswax so he wouldn't be tempted. And this is a very effective method that you can use even now, not with the sirens, of course. But the internet is worse than the sirens. I think that'll suck your day right up. And so I do all of these programs like Freedom, where you download the software and it'll cut you off from the internet, and you cannot get back on unless you restart your computer, which is humiliating, and you want to avoid that. So, so that's one Odysseus strategy. Putting food, like junk food, as far away as possible. That's another one. Putting my iPhone in another room while I'm writing. That's another Odysseus strategy I use.
Yeah. So really finding ways to focus.
Right. Finding ways to focus and sort of almost be your own babysitter. Know that you are not always to be trusted, and that you have to prepare for that.
Yes, putting that structure in place to support you.
Exactly, that structure.
So what resources do you recommend to our listeners? What books have you read, podcasts, blogs? What are you into that you find helpful?
I am a big fan of the whole behavioral economics genre, which is Daniel Kahneman, and there's a book called Nudge by Cass Sunstein, and Dick Thaler, which is very good. And that's all about what I was talking about, how our brains are really flawed, and we have all these we think our brains are good, but they're filled with problems and biases. So this is trying to counteract those. So I'm a big fan of that. My friend James Altucher has a great blog that deals with finance, but also personal life, and he's crazy open about his failures, which I love. I mean, that is almost his trademark. He just talks about how he's had some terrible ideas. He earned millions. He lost millions. He earned millions. He lost millions. And he went through all this, and he'll tell you how you can at least try to avoid it.
That's awesome. So many times we're afraid of failing, and so we don't allow ourselves to learn and grow and create what we could ultimately create if we just moved through it. And I love those stories where people just are so open about, everything that went wrong and then how things turned around as a result of it.
Exactly. Something's going on outside my window. I don't know what it is, but there's some sirens. I don't know if you can hear them. But yes, absolutely. I love that genre too. And I try to do it myself in my books. I try to be as open about my failures, which are many. And even now, I try to be an idea machine and come up with as many ideas as I can. But I'm fully aware that most of those ideas are terrible, and so they're not going to work. But it's a quantity game. You've got to come up with a whole bunch, and some are going to take off. Most are not.
It's like panning for gold, right?
It sure is. It sure is. Exactly. You get a lot of dirt.
You do. So, AJ, if you were to do this all over again, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, a lot of things. That guy had a lot to learn. But one is just what we were talking about just now. Like, don't be afraid of failure. There's going to be embarrassments, and so what? And and also, I would say to have more chutzpah. I was very shy, and I had to force myself to do some of these things. But when I forced myself to do them and approach people, or forced myself to do public speaking gigs, which I hated at first, it was horrible. But eventually, I learned to love it. So I would say do even more of that. Just don't have more chutzpah. Don't be shy and retiring because you fear failure. Failure is just a part of life. And I don't, people say embrace the suck. I can't really embrace failure. It's not, I don't love it, but it is such a part of, if you want to succeed, you're gonna fail many times.
I love that. Have more chutzpah.
More chutzpah, strategic chutzpah. That's what I tell people. Don't be like just crazy and bold and doing things that you don't think about the consequences, but be strategic with your chutzpah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you inspired people. I can't wait to meet you at the party. Hopefully some of my cousins will be there that are listening today.
Absolutely. I would love to have them there. It's going to be super fun. And I've got to figure out, Patty, would you send me your grandparents' names so I can figure out? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll go onto the site and give you everything we've got. My kids have done those 6th grade genealogy projects. So we've got a little bit of information already accumulated.
Great. Perfect. You're on your way.
We are. I can't wait to see how I'm related to everyone.
Yeah, and as part of you bring up history, one thing I'm going to do is I have these people who impersonate historical figures. So there'll be a section for the kids where they can go meet their cousin George Washington and their cousin Abraham Lincoln.
That's great. That's great. Okay, AJ, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, and congrats on all you do.
Oh, same to you.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Would you like to turn your message into a signature system and monetize it with a program or product online? Join me for the Online Biz webinar, where we'll take you through the steps required to monetize your message. Head on over to theonlinebizwebinar.com and reserve your spot today. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Entrepreneur Unleashed Show. If you did, please go to pattykeating.com and let me know what you're up to this year in your business. While you're there, be sure to grab your copy of 5 Quick Ways to Share Your Expertise.